Hey guys, over the weekend I had the opportunity to speak with Callie Chase, the author of Bug, which if you don't know what Bug is, it's a really awesome horror story that's just been flying through the charts on the Kindle Vella. I was so excited to talk to her, and then right before we got to meet up on Zoom, a big thunder and lightning storm came over my house. I lost power twice. It turned out I found out later that a couple of tornadoes hit right near my area. Luckily, I wasn't transported to Kansas and I was able to do the interview. Unfortunately, my side of the screen is a little bit dark, but that's okay, because you don't want to pay attention to my side anyway. You want to listen to what Callie has to say. She gives a lot of really great insights into Bug, her inspiration behind it, why she put it on Vella, and she talks a lot about the Vella program, why readers should get into it, why writers should get into it, and how writers can find success on the platform. It was a really great interview and I'm really excited to share it with you. I hope you enjoy it, and if you do, please hit like and subscribe. I'm going to be talking about Vella a lot in the future. I'll be talking with other authors, I'll be talking about publishing on the platform, how you can do it on a budget, but without further ado, let's talk to Callie. Hi Callie, how are you? Thanks for being here.
I am great. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
So before we get too much into Vella and Bug, what are you reading on Vella right now?
Oh my gosh, I should have been probably more prepared for that question. That's a great one. So obviously, I'm reading The Marriage Auction by Audrey Carlin. Love
Everybody is
it, and
reading that.
I think so, pretty much. I hope so. It's amazing. But I'm also reading, and I'll probably get the title wrong. It's by Johnny Miles. It's Sweet Lost Dangerous Males. I mean, that's probably my number two favorite series on Vella. I love it. I'm a little behind on the episodes, but Johnny is so talented. It's such a beautifully woven story, big cast. So those are my top two at the moment. I try to read a couple episodes, especially all the early ones for new series every single week. And some weeks I'm much more aggressive as a reader than other weeks. And so this is a slow week for me. But yeah, I try to read quite a bit just so I know what, our fellow writers are doing.
Yeah, I like it. Seems like everyone is doing that. Like all of the writers on Vella are very there to support each other,
Yeah.
and just read each other's stuff and spread the word on each other, which is really cool.
Yes, which is
So let's get into Bug a little bit.
sure.
When you wrote that, did you know you were going to be writing a serialized story, or did that come after the fact?
No, so the bug story is kind of an awesome one. I'll try to make it the short version for you. Probably like 5 years ago, I wrote Bug as a novel, and I intended it to be multiple, like a long series. So I knew where it was going to start, kind of knew where it was going to end. But then I was like, and then there will be stuff in the middle, books that come between. So I finished the first book and queried it to agents and was unilaterally rejected. But I got a ton of feedback, which was surprising because, like sort of the common, conversation around agents is they can't give feedback. They don't. But I got a lot, and I was really grateful for that because the overriding feedback I got was that the world building was tremendous. It was haunting, memorable, but it wasn't finished. And the most specific feedback I got from one agent in particular was that it felt like the first part of the first book, not even the full first book, which honestly I knew was the case. I mean, I knew it wasn't ready. So put it on the back burner and it did nothing with it at all until I heard that, Vella was coming around. And it was actually, I was working with a marketing person on some of my other projects, not related to even writing, some of my other business. And when he heard that Vella was coming out, he said, we had gone through this conversation, multiple times about like, how do I want certain aspects of my business to flow? What are my goals? Very sort of like business planning, goal setting sort of conversations. And my writing had always been something that was super important, but I was a ghostwriter, had never published really anything under my own name. So when Bella was announced, he was like, this is probably the chance, like, this is the right thing for Bug. Have you thought about it? Blah, blah, blah. And so when Vella launched, I was hoping to have like 10 episodes. But once I really sat back down with that original novel, which was it was too short, even for really what it was trying to be. It was like 68,000 words. And I quickly realized, I'm like, oh gosh, I have like a start, but not even that big of a head start. So what I did is the opening of my novel was episode 1 with minor modifications. So that's one thing from the novel version that was able to stay somewhat intact. But pretty much after that, everything is almost brand new writing. I actually went through to look the other day because as I come to the end of the year and I'm like focusing on goals and productivity and stuff, um, I have written about 150,000 words of Bug so far, but less than 15,000 of those words came from the original novel because
Wow.
the structure was just not there and it wasn't going to work in this format. So that was the long version. It started out as one project. It has now basically the heart and soul of the original novel is what's happening on the page now. But real time, I'm like, okay, let's get this. And that's one of the things I love about Bella so much is the episodic structure is exactly what I think the story I wanted to tell needed. I just didn't know that 5 years ago when I'm like, let's start with book one and start
Yeah.
at the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing you mentioned that one of the agents said to you that it did fantastic world building, and one of the things I love about Bug is you do a really great job of making small characters that are influential to the story, but they're also very influential to the setting. Like, without I don't want to go like too far into the episodes, but in episode one there's the boxers, and in episode two there's the surfers and the tourists, and those people they make that setting. They really fill it in and flush it out. But then they're also important to the story. So I think that was really fantastic.
Thank you. I appreciate that because honestly, I mean, that's what I hope for. I think that's what every writer hopes for is that none of the small details feel irrelevant or, indulgent. Like, oh, I just wanted to write a scene of somebody running on the beach. Like it actually matters. But thank you. I really appreciate that.
So where did Bug come from? Where did you decide to write a zombie story? Are you a big zombie fan, or
I'm a huge zombie
you
fan.
like to dress up as them? By the way, if anybody's watching, you should follow her on social media because she she likes to dress up as zombies on occasion.
Exactly. Full makeup. I'm sorry I couldn't do it for today. It's production. I loved The Walking Dead. I love the zombie genre. And for me, I kind of fell, and again, please know, like, this is like the standard setter for the genre. I am by no means critiquing The Walking Dead, but where I sort of started to fall away from being like the rabid super fan was right about the time when things got really, really dark, really violent. And I think there's been a lot of people who have talked about, no spoilers, of course, the different phases of that series and where, sort of the initial fall off happened. And I was definitely there
I
when
was
it
there.
became super, not that it's not realistic, I mean, obviously, but I just started thinking, like, man, this would be such a different story if we followed different characters, like characters who were maybe more female than male, if there were fewer person versus person sort of violent interactions that really had to. I think reality, if there were something like that that actually could happen, God forbid, the zombies came, all of that would be realistic. And that's what makes a genre like dystopian or post-apoc so interesting is it's really cool and interesting and intriguing to see how humans behave in different groups of humans. But for me, I thought, I just want to explore like a slightly different dynamic, and especially for me, adding something in that wasn't, you sort of have that polarity of we're all fighting the zombies or each other. So what I did with Bug was I tried to think of like what is something else that can advance the story and create both, enemies and allies that isn't going to just like there's just not one direction of we all have to kill everything we see to survive. There's different things I hope at work in Bug. It takes a bit to build all that out and to get to the points where you can actually see that happening. But that was what motivated me to really do it. And then also just the challenge of writing action. I'd never written anything where, I mean, like truly, I have no idea how to really write an action scene where something happens like with a knife or I mean I've like never touched a gun in real life, so I'm like knowing my limitations. I'm like, okay, there's just not, this isn't going to be a military zombie series, you know what I mean? It's going to be much more focused on like what a person like me would be like, I need to find a pen so I can like stab someone in the head, which that never happens. There's no pen stabbings, but you know what I mean? Sticking within my wheelhouse, things that I felt comfortable writing and still telling a story that I hope is action oriented and has all the good stuff that we like to zombie series to do.
I actually, that's something that's going on with my story as well. The action sequences, I've never in that level of action sequence, because mine's also dystopian, and it's that fast-paced action is really hard to write where it's exciting but also not just like you know what I mean?
Exactly. Exactly. And you definitely have that. I mean, the first scene of your first episode, you have that, and I don't want to give anything away, but like the concrete slab, and you've got like that, body parts moving around. It's fun to write, right? It's
It is, yeah.
challenging because you're focused on like what you can see and what you can picture, and you don't want anyone to be lost. But at the same time, you're like, I want you to hear it and see it.
Exactly, it's fun. I think dystopian on Kindle Vella has a really good place right now. Your story is amazing. I like Naomi Alt's Chew a lot. So yeah,
Yep.
so dystopian's gonna. I think that's gonna be a big focus on Vella moving forward. I think you're gonna see a lot of really great stories on there. Do you have anything you are willing to say to the people about your future plans for Bug, where you plan on going with it, in
Oh,
terms
yeah.
of like chapters, seasons and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, so when I started with, making the decision to take what was basically a broken book and really rewriting it into a series, I sort of set a goal in mind that like I would see how it did for the first 6 months, see how the story was flowing, because now I am into 100% new content. So that means week on week, I'm like plotting, planning. I did have a start and a finish in mind, but then the roadmap all the way between was definitely under construction, not developed. So for me, like going forward, I have a really long view for Bug. I really hope I can get to 200 to 300 episodes. I mean, I think right now I'm on as of today, episode 54 is scheduled, and we're only on day 3. So like literally the poor, people who are actually like interested, it's like 7,000 episodes later, we'll make it to day 10, it's not going to go that long. But I would like to be able to tell sort of the full story that I think is going to take. I honestly didn't think I could even hit 50 episodes, and here we are, 54 with day 3. So my plan is hopefully to write, or at least to publish Bug all through 2022, however many episodes that is. Right now I'm at 3 episodes a week. And that seems to be working for not only my schedule, but also it just seems to be a good volume of content. So if that continues, great. But I was working on something that was sort of a series before I found out about Vella and really reinvested in Bug. So definitely have plans for either a second series at some point in the future, or, if Bug ends up going a little bit longer than I planned, whatever, I'll be really happy with that. If it, not to make anybody think like 7 million episodes from now, Bug is still going to be trudging around. But yeah, that's definitely my plan, is to keep it going for at least another year, of active publishing episodes.
Cool. I've definitely seen some authors do that where they have a series and they ain't letting it go. It's never gonna end.
Exactly. And that's the good thing about Bella too, is, you see kind of real time. So if at some point there's, it's just not as engaging, or it's not getting the reads, then, I can make decisions and be like, okay, let's wind this up.
Yeah. So you do have an end place in mind, though. You do know where the characters are going to be heading.
Yes, I know who lives, I know who doesn't. So
I want to know already, but so let's talk a little bit about Vella itself. If you're talking to a reader who has heard about Vella but is skeptical about checking it out, what do you say to them to get them to want to read Vella? What makes Vella special?
I think what makes Fellow special, honestly, is the structure and the fact that you can literally buy episodes as you go. So if you're in the mood for, I mean, I think a lot of people who are avid readers really do consume a lot of content every single week. So if are buying your books, ebooks, paperback, whatever they are, and you're a person who loses your place, or you can't sit through and finish a book in one sitting, Vela's so great because you can read a short chapter, episode, whatever. I think readers are probably not as comfortable with the term episode as the writers are, but you read a short chapter excerpt just when you have time, like literally, I have read Vella episodes while I'm like blow drying my hair, or literally just, I know I have 5 minutes while I'm waiting for like something to microwave, and I'll be like, oh, let's just check it out. And if you love the series, you can continue to binge through or follow it or look forward to something just like you do with a TV show. But if you get, 1, 2, 3 episodes in and you're not completely in love with it, you're not committed. You haven't bought the whole thing, that kind of pay as you go model. I think it's really attractive because for me, I feel like, great, I can read this episode. If I love it, I bought it. And if that one doesn't hook me, no harm done. I'll just move on to something else. And maybe I'll go back. I'll be in a different mood in another week. And I want to try, sci-fi thriller adventure. It's all there. So I think Bella offers so much for so many different types of readers, depending on what you're interested in. It's really the reading experience that, to me, over time, will sell itself to readers.
I think so too. I think the tokens themselves can seem a little intimidating because you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to pay tokens for each episode. But when you break down like the cost ratio of, you get these big bundles of hundreds of tokens, you're ending up paying like 3 cents for an episode. So it's not, yeah.
I know. And I think that like learning curve and education is probably for the writers one of the more frustrating things, because I have had readers contact me on the bug page and say, um, I love the story, but it's getting too expensive. And I'm like, I'm sorry you feel that way, but it's not. I mean, if you actually do the math for the word count for each individual series, it's really very competitively priced with an ebook version, of
Yeah.
just about anything else you'll find.
Yeah, I agree. So let me give you some naysayer questions now and pretend I'm the disgruntled customer, okay?
Okay.
It feels to me like I'll be spending more money on reading the episodes than just waiting for you to put it out on a book.
That's a very valid concern. What I can tell you is I think a lot of writers are writing series that wouldn't translate into ebooks as well. So for example, if I were to publish the content that I had right now today on Bug as a book, it would be really the equivalent of two full-size novels, and you wouldn't feel like you actually had the full story. So you'd read one book, stopping point, second book, stopping point. And for what you'd spend for two books, really, dollar for dollar, I think the episodic version of the series is a lot more cost effective. Plus it just works. It fits the expectation that you might have of what you're reading better, because there's really no stopping point. It's keeps growing and developing and going. So I don't know if you picked up a book version. I'm not one of the authors that has a plan to ever publish book in book form, at least not at this time. So you wouldn't be able to access it any other way, and hopefully you want to. So
Yeah, and I think the episodic storytelling is extremely different, and it can translate into a book, sure, but you don't know for sure that anyone's going to be publishing it that way. And if they do, it's in segments, right? So if you read 90K words on Vella, they might sell that as 2 ebooks, which is actually going to be more than if you had just paid for the chapters.
Exactly.
And the other cool thing I think about the Vella chapters, episodes, is that you're getting more content than you would get in the ebook, because there's those author notes at the bottom where the author kind of talks about their story and their thought process. So it's a little bit more than just an ebook.
Yeah, and for me too with Bug, because with my background and stuff, I'm a pretty strict technician when it comes to writing, and so novel structure, whatever structure your story fits into, it's a certain thing that I think readers understand and expect intuitively, and that's not the same structure that, like, for example, Bug follows. Not to say that no one can follow novel structure and make a series work. I certainly don't mean to suggest that, but for me, I'm really not following like a traditional 3-act structure, hero's journey. Like my series is structured so that each episode fits within the arc of those characters in that moment in the series. with a very, very long horizon in front of it. So it's definitely if they were to become, let's say, books at some point, I think I'd have to do a lot of restructuring, filling in, changing of things. I didn't do it the first time that way for a reason, so I don't even know that I could do it this time around. But for authors who have found success doing that, that's great. But I do think they've done, from what I've heard, again, I have not done this, but there's some fill-in editing, changing that needs to happen to go from strictly Vela serial structure to a book.
I absolutely will have to do some editing with that on mine. I was also thinking with mine, I have this character who makes up these mythologies as he goes along. So I was thinking when I edit it into book form, I'll probably cut some of those to make the book more readable in that form. So if you go on Vella and read my story, you're actually getting whole parts of the story that wouldn't be in the book form. And I think that you're going to see that a lot with authors.
Yes. I mean, I don't know for me that I could have one of the things I love about how Bug is coming out in Bella is I have so many different point of view characters, which if I sit down to write a novel, I would never allow myself to have like 10 POV characters, or we're going to get this little insight into this character in this episode because, like, thematically or from even just like a narrative perspective, it works here. But in a book, I'd be like, nope, you start with one, you finish with one, and there you go.
Yeah. I'm going to give you one more naysayer question.
Sure.
What if I go on there and I start reading stories and then the author drops the story?
I mean, that's unfortunately, I can't speak to every author's experience, and I hope that that doesn't happen for a reader who really loves the series that they get attached to. But I would say the vast majority of the authors on the platform not only are committed to the work, but they're also accessible. So if you are worried about getting attached to a series that might disappear, follow the author on their social media, Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is, and reach out. I don't do a lot in my author notes to encourage readers to contact me, but some do, and they want you to join reader groups and all that. So if you're a person who wants to like nudge the author and be like, hey, I want more, what happened here? That's one wonderful thing about Vela is I think it's because it's a series that maybe is being produced real time and that the authors aren't committed to content all the way down, the line. They can take reader feedback, whether it's write more, write faster, I didn't like this, I don't like this, or hey, where'd you go? Are you, on vacation because I want more episodes? So I think that sort of breaking that fourth wall between the author and the reader is more possible on Vella than potentially with books. So, but to be fair, absolutely, anything can happen at any time. Just like your favorite author might never publish another book after the one you just finished.
Or a TV show might get canceled.
Yes, or they might have a pandemic, so they can't film for 2 years driving out. It happens. It's understandable disappointments.
One thing I think that Amazon seems to be doing, and I haven't quite figured out their algorithms for Vella, and I don't know if anybody has, but it does seem to me that they are putting to the top of what you see when you go on there are more, the most important factor is their publishing rate and their consistency with doing that. So I think the stories you're going to find when you go on Vella, unless you're really searching page, are going to be people who are publishing regularly.
Definitely. But even still, I mean, just to plug authors whose work isn't on like the first page of the search results, the second page, I've read even farther down the line just to see like, okay, why are some series not getting the same exposure? There's some great series all over Vella, wherever they end up on the leaderboard or the rank. So I would say if you're a reader and you're, searching a bunch of different ways, don't be discouraged if you see an author who's publishing once a week. That may be their schedule and that may be what works for them. But, give all the more love the Vella authors get and the more reads the series has, the more likely it is that the author will continue to produce. So
yeah, exactly.
Cycle.
Yeah. And there's like page 10 stories on there that I'm reading. So
yeah, that are great. I think you made a good point that it's still very early days for Vella and everything from findability, discoverability, searchability. It's all going to change. So we just have to kind of keep focusing, grinding out the word count, creating great stories, and fingers crossed.
Yeah. Where do you see Vella in the future? Where do you see Vella in like next year even?
It's so funny that you say that because that is something I'm actually really excited about. I'm like an optimist, so I truly hope that like next year is we won't even be able to believe how different the platform will look. I think physically it's going to look different. I think the way that readers access it will be easier. And I don't know anything. I mean, I have no insider knowledge. This is just my, hopeful predictions. But I think the content is going to continue to grow exponentially. I think authors will come to the platform. And I hope, from the perspective of volume of readers, that whatever happens in the next, I think, a lot of things that roll out new the first 8, 9 months are always that sort of like touch and go, what's happening, we're finding our way. And I'm not saying that Amazon is finding their way. I'm sure they know exactly what they're doing. Right. I think from the author experience on the platform, though, by spring, we'll all have had, especially those who were there, from the earlier launch days, July, August, September, we'll all have months now behind us of predictability, understanding the routine. And I'm just excited to see if they're doing, Amazon's doing Instagram tours with authors, they're doing live events, they're definitely growing the exposure on the platform. So I certainly don't have the creativity to even project and predict where it will go, but I'm very optimistic about it. I think if we could see readership grow exponentially next year, it's just so fun to see what might happen. It could be really cool.
Yeah. I'll say I have a very small YouTube channel, but my more popular videos are the ones where I talk about Vella. So I think there's a lot of interest there. I think people are very interested in it. And another interesting thing about that is that, I always look at all my analytics and stuff, and on my Vella videos, more than any other video I have, views are coming from Canada and Europe. So I think that they're really waiting and excited for Vella to come there. So
that really excites me on both from a reader and an author perspective, because that's something I think is going to really change too, that a lot of, big established authors have published on Vella, and that's amazing. But just imagine when it's international and when we have, access for even more authors, big, small, aspiring, established. It's going to be a huge, I would guess, as big as anything else, KDP, KU.
I think so too.
It's going to grow.
Yeah. So when me and you talked a couple days ago, I had asked you about the trajectory of your popularity of your story, and you said that it was pretty consistent from the beginning. You sort of knew how you wanted to market the book and get readers in, and you've been able to maintain that. But you also said if you were starting it now, because you started right when Vella started, right? You started putting it out, and you said if you started now, you would do that differently. So can you give us some insights on what you did at the beginning and what you would do differently now?
Oh, yes, that's such a great question. I think what I did at the beginning is I worked very closely. So I think people probably won't be disappointed to hear this, but I worked very closely with a marketing manager before Vella launched. So we came up with a plan really and truly from the time we first heard it was going to be available before it even launched, so that I would know exactly how to have, my cover designed and ready. So it was exactly what I needed. My episode frequency, because I realized how much I had to rewrite as I was going. And then everything else that goes into it, social. So the one thing I wasn't fully prepared for when it did launch was the commitment that I would need to growing like my social media. And that has been the thing that's come probably last and in phases as time and opportunity has allowed. So I think the only thing I would probably change is I would probably have worked a little bit harder to build up that social media presence, so that literally I had like nothing on my Instagram page for months. And so that, how much does that help? I think there are authors who work very consistently on engagement and growing brand awareness on social. I did not make that a priority early, and really it was in service of other decisions, like, okay, I need to be writing here, I need to be focusing on that. And even now I'm working on more social media graphics and additional art, because I have that one cover for Bug that has worked so beautifully for me. But I want to have more graphics, more art, more videos. Interactive content seems to perform well, and so that's something I'm doing as I go, that I think if I either had it to do all over again, or if I started a second series, I would be way more ahead on the content than I was when I actually did Launch Bug, and then a little bit farther ahead to build up a bigger cushion on things like social media posts. There are just times when I just don't do any because I just can't get to it. And even for me, there's a learning curve. I don't know a lot about a lot of things that people do and do really, really well. So thank goodness I have help and support. I'm not doing it all by myself, but I would probably be even more prepared. And even if I could build in like a 6-week cushion for everything, ideally, that's what I would do second time around.
So what did you do early on to get readers in?
So my goal when Vella launched was I had a very specific read goal and like goal. And I know there's no way that you can control that, but when you set the goal and then you kind of work your way backward, like I had no idea. I really had no idea if a zombie series would perform well. You still hear, I mean, I still hear all the time, zombies don't sell, zombies don't sell. I think they do. I mean, I think the fact that there are movies and books coming out every week that, include zombies, I think they do sell. But, I had no idea what really to expect in terms of volume. So I just set a goal and it was modest but attainable. So I set, first of all, a read goal. I also set sort of a marketing budget goal where I thought, okay, I'm going to be willing to spend this amount of money no matter what it goes to, whether it's art, marketing, etc. And at what point was sort of like my pain point where I knew, okay, the cost benefit, I'm spending too much to support, the growth, and then also the word count. So I really committed to myself that if I couldn't put out 3 episodes a week, that was based for me on previous serial writing that I had done as a ghostwriter. And when I was doing that in the past, the series I worked on literally released every single day and sometimes twice a day. So that pace I knew I couldn't sustain and do all the other things in the world that I have to do for work, but to maintain 3 episodes a week. So those are my initial goals. Like I want to be at a certain place in terms of volume, at a certain place in terms of knowing people are actually reading it, and getting there. I kind of worked backward to what are the factors that I can control to hopefully reach those goals. And so I feel like I'm talking in a big rambly circle to answer your question, but that has been something that I've sort of reproduced and refined month on month. And again, not by myself. I'm not sitting here in a vacuum. I have help to figure out, okay, well, if this is what our read was in September, should we change something? Should we, my episodes were really, really long. Are they too long? Are they too short? What is is there a token value that seems to be a milestone for people to get past? So just constantly, I mean, you said you're constantly looking at your data and analyzing the numbers, and I'm doing the same and have been since day one, since launch. So
Do you feel
hopefully,
that when you're doing that, you have to almost uh, break that down by episode as well, where you have to say to yourself, like, okay, here I got 100 views, 100 reads, 100 reads, 100 reads, 50 reads. What's happening at this point that I need to change to make that 100 reads as well?
yes. And that I think is where I have the least amount of, I'll call it control, because you just never know if people get busy and they will come back to that episode, or if there seems to be a certain, I have not been able to observe, in my opinion, consistent drop off numbers. So I feel like there's not a single episode that's like weak, or I know about where in my series people would have to start paying for episodes if they use those 200 free tokens. So I've looked at it every which way. Like, is this something that's holding people back? And I haven't observed any trends like that that would make me change anything in the content. But I was still doing the looking because I didn't know. I mean, I was terrified that no one would read past episode 3, no one would read past episode 4. And then I did some things, because it's like such a hybrid mashup of genres. I also was really mindful of where I placed certain breadcrumbs so that if somebody was using those 200 free tokens, they would get enough of something that was happening, like the paranormal aspect, before they ran out of the free 200. So if it was something they liked, hopefully they would be, motivated to buy more tokens and come back. So I don't know that I have, a system down that's worked, but we're just working. We work on it every day,
Yeah. Well, something's working because Bug is doing very well.
Thank you. Thank you.
But I mean, it's funny when you talk about things like that. The same thing with the marriage auction. Like we can say, well, Audrey did this and you did this, but at the end it comes down to you're engaging your reader with your story. If you don't have that, you're not going to get the rest. So it doesn't matter how much marketing you put in.
Well, I hope so. And that's the only thing I can say about Bug, which I think every writer wants to be able to say. So I hope that this, is the truth. I've had some people who are just friends or fellow writers who have said, I hate zombies. It's not going to be for me. I don't like horror. I don't like to be scared. And they've given a few episodes a try and said, okay, this is not what I expected. I'm actually interested. Or so I hope, and I think for everybody, that's the goal, right? Something that people can't get away from, but there's still a process of like discoverability and getting the story out there and engagement that, people won't read it if they can't find it. So it's all a big mess.
Getting them to find it is the first thing, and then keeping them there is the second thing.
Yeah.
When I did stand-up comedy, I was hanging out with a big-name comedian whose name I won't say, and he said to me, because I had a pretty bad set this one night, and he said, when you're a brand new comedian that nobody knows, you have 10 seconds to make them laugh. When you're an established comedian who people came to see, like specifically, you have a minute. And what he meant by that was that, yeah, I got a little more time, but not a lot more time. If I don't make them laugh, it doesn't matter, You got to keep them engaged. So
it's so true. I think especially like established authors, I think people don't realize, there's a lot of pressure to stay on top. There's a lot of pressure to keep performing and finding stories that people want to read and redefining your brand over and over so that it stays fresh. So it's a hard job that we give ourselves as writers, but hopefully fulfilling and fun.
That's one of the reasons why I'm so thankful when you take your time out of your day to do this interview, or you were talking to me on social media and helping me out. And like I said about Audrey last week, how helpful all of these writers are, because I know how busy your schedule is as a writer. You have free time and you say, well, it's not free time. I need to market, I need to edit, I need to write. There's always something to do. So it's really appreciated that you guys do that.
I'm so glad that, we get these chances, these opportunities, even just like the groups where people share knowledge. I mean, I know there's a lot of differing opinions and different perspectives, but that's the whole point, is we all share what we've done or what we think or believe, and then everyone takes away from it what hopefully works best for them. So I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you, because especially with Bug, like I haven't heard a ton from readers, but what some of the data we've seen shows is the readers seem to be like, it's not just like my sister and my dad. I don't think has read a single up. I don't think he knows. Honestly, I love him to pieces, but he gets very confused. So I feel like a lot of the readers are like strongly men, which surprises me. I'm like, I feel like this is kind of zombie light, but that's great. If I have male readers, I appreciate that. But you don't get that one-on-one feedback. So even just talking to fellow writers who are like, yay, this is working, blah, blah, blah. Thank you for wanting to talk to me. I appreciate it.
So you have, and your thumbs are in the thousands, right? Talking to me, who is in the hundreds, or other writers who are in the less than hundreds, what do you think is a good strategy for getting from point A to point B, and what do you think are things that a lot of authors are doing that may not be a good strategy?
Yeah, well, I think it really depends on where you're at, like in your writing career. So I've talked to a lot of writers on Vella who have published 6 books, but aren't seeing traction with their Vella series. And I think if that happens, the easiest thing to look at, so, first of all, your plan. Did you have a plan? Did you, have a plan not only for the content, but then also for engagement, marketing, whatever that is? It's not like anyone has to have an enormous budget to do any of this stuff. Plans are just plans, and you kind of flow things out. But my first focus would always be on the content, because I've read a lot of series for people, or just like, hey, would you give me your thoughts on episode 1? And is it clear enough? if things like your cover image, the little synopsis that you get from Amazon on your series, and your first 3 episodes aren't clear, or there are certain things happening that just evoke more questions and confusion. Even if the story idea is genius and exciting and innovative, it is that execution that will keep really an organic reader coming back. So I would say, especially if you're not hiring a paid editor, have a team of betas who are not your friends, who are people who will give you the hard news, like, I didn't like this and I didn't understand it. Because I think unless you just surround yourself with mean people, you don't need that. But surround yourself with honest people who will say, like, I'm not here to make you feel good or to cheer you up and to pump you up. I really want to say, like, literally, this paragraph, the transition was so rocky, I had to go back and reread it 3 times. Your reader is not going to do that. Like you said, you have 10 seconds in stand up to make them laugh. And I think the same happens. Our attention spans are so short that every single one of my episodes, I have readers for. I get help with the content before I even write it. I vet the ideas. It's a team approach in terms of knowing that, like, what I am doing hopefully will land well with readers. And even still, I know there are things that even within Bug, like each of the episodes, depending on what it's doing, when it's an action episode, there's very little sort of world building and not a lot of emotion. And then you'll maybe experience a big tonal shift when you go into a flashback or sort of a character driven episode. But to make sure that they're not so isolating that a reader would say, this feels like a totally different book. Why am I even here? And I couldn't do that on my own. I have no perspective. And I think a lot of people don't on their own writing. So that's probably where I would start, is critique partners, even if you delay releasing episodes for longer than you would like to, so you get that feedback. I really feel like if one person has an opinion, that's representative of what at least one other reader is going to say. So take those objections or concerns and make sure the story, the episodes itself, each are as clear, as well written as they can possibly be. And that's sort of the first thing that you can do immediately to make sure you don't lose a reader once you've got them. And then you can put, plans into place, whether it's marketing, social media, et cetera, to try to just drive more traffic to your story. Does that make sense? Long and rambling.
Yeah,
I don't even know if I remember your question anymore.
I was asking how to get from the smaller numbers to the thousands. So it's more for not necessarily a new writer, but somebody who's already writing and has some stories out, and then how did they get there, which you answered perfectly, I think.
Oh, good. But the other thing too is the episode likes, like that like function. I don't always know that we can rely on likes to tell us everything we need to know about our episodes, because I think a lot of us have read numbers, but that doesn't translate to necessarily a thumbs up on the episode. But then someone comes back and reads the next one. So I wouldn't just say, if you've got, we all know in our dashboards what our episode read count is. So if there's a big discrepancy between reads and likes, maybe that's something to analyze or to figure out what you can do better there. If it's that your likes are in line with your reads and you just really need to boost the number of reads you're getting, that's sort of a different problem. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Hopefully some of the read count and like differences is because they got to the end of that chapter and just went next chapter.
Exactly. Don't even slow down to thumbs it up. Just keep going.
Well, I think that's all the questions I have for today. Do you want to, before we go, let people know where they can find you or what they should be looking for?
Sure. That would be awesome. I would absolutely love if you want to there's a Bug page on Facebook. Follow me on Instagram. I have a Twitter page or account. Can't even say the thing, but I'm never on Twitter, so probably Facebook and Instagram are the best places. But especially the Facebook Bug page, anything that we post that's videos, upcoming things, episode teasers, it's all there. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the reads and all the time, Gage. This has been fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And I think that people are going to get a lot out from what you had to give them here today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.